All right, thank you all again so much for joining us today. My name is Mary Klein Stively. I'm the CEO at Child's Drive, and I'm super excited to have you all here with us today as Dr. Gary Stoby shares more about the transition to adulthood. So Dr. Stoby is a board-certified neurologist, subspecializing in cognitive behavioral neurology. He joined the University of Washington School of Medicine faculty in 2008 and is currently clinical professor with a dual appointment to the departments of neurology and psychiatry and behavioral sciences. Dr. Stoby serves as the director of adult services at Seattle Children's Autism Center, as medical director of the UW Medicine Adult Autism Clinic, and as director of the Adults and Elders program at the University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities at UW. Wow. Welcome, Dr. Stoby. I'm so happy to have you here with us today and look forward to hearing you speak.
Thanks, Mary. It's great to be here today. And thanks to everybody for joining, and thanks for inviting me to speak on this topic. We have about 22 minutes, so not a lot of time. Certainly not enough time to do it justice. So we're going to be touching on just a couple of real kind of high level points. Everybody hear me okay? Thumbs up from everybody. My internet is not the greatest today, so apologize if I'm choppy. Just to say a little bit about myself and my journey. So I am, as Mary mentioned, I'm an adult neurologist by training, and there's not a lot of me that my specialty that specialize in neurodevelopmental conditions that affect the brain out of development. I have had an interest in human behavior since my kind of undergraduate years. I lived with my aunt in high school who had a severe form of multiple sclerosis, and was really my first kind of exposure to how conditions of the brain can affect the outward behavior of a person. And I really got interested in autism in my trainings at UCLA in the 1990s. This was back in the day where at UCLA, children would be admitted to the inpatient unit to receive intensive therapies for early intervention therapies for children with autism. And I went into private practice in Washington and started to meet with families and meet with children. This was pre-internet days, and yet the network was pretty tight of parents and families. And I started to learn, wow, what a lack of services that existed. And also really got to appreciate the person underneath the surface of the behaviors. And even children and young adults that are non-speaking, to make connections with them, and I took an approach that was to treat people as with respect, and with the kind of, I would go into it with the thinking that, like, I'm gonna approach this person like they can understand me, because I don't know, maybe they can. And that approach really opened my eyes to so much that was underneath the surface. And I have a passion, in addition to the kind of the science of human behavior, I have a passion for healthcare delivery. And I was just, as I got deeper into this field, just more and more astounded by the lack of services, the lack of supports, the inequities that exist in our healthcare delivery systems, and the terrible kind of misunderstanding that exists amongst the community that maybe aren't family members. as we've kind of continued on this path now, I've been doing this for about almost 30 years now. I've seen a lot of progress but at the same time, I see that we are only a part of the way on this journey. I think we have to keep pushing as a community to push for the needed supports for our youth and adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And I really enjoy this work. It's interesting because I have learned most of what I've learned from my families and from my patients, and by listening to these problems that exist, and getting ideas on, creative ideas, because that's what we often have to do. This is a world where it's not a simple prescription of a medication to solve a problem. We're in a world where we have to be creative, and we have to come up with ideas, and we have to work together. But there's huge number of people that have passion for this work. Many of the professionals that go into the field are family members. They have siblings or they have children themselves, and they see these same inequities in delivery, and they also become passionate. So it's pretty fun to work with so many people that have such a strong passion for similar goals. And I think that I feel like I'm in just such a lucky and unique position at University of Washington and Seattle Children's to help conduct the choir, so to speak, and try to get us to sing in harmony, and to try to get us to row together so that we can make the maximal progress kind of moving forward as a community. I want to say a few points then about, so kind of coming into kind of the individual families and the issue of transition to adulthood. So one thing I want to say is I think for families and for parents especially, I see a journey. I see a journey that starts at the beginning, when you face a diagnosis of a condition that is likely to last into adulthood, and how that really blows your world into so many different directions. And you spend a lot of time at the beginning kind of piecing it together to get back on track and to move forward. And then I see parents often get to a stage where, okay, they're back on track. We start to see progress. Now it's just a lot of work, and just got to keep moving forward, putting out fires of crises often, and then getting back again on the track and keep moving forward. And then I see parents get to a stage of beyond just acceptance. And, it's interesting because we're in the end of the month of April, which is Autism Acceptance Month. It used to be called Autism Awareness Month. It's moved to acceptance. And I say we need to get to another stage. We need to get to a stage of celebration. We need to get to a stage where we celebrate strengths, and we celebrate our victories, and we celebrate people for who they are, not who we thought they were going to be, or maybe who we originally wished they were going to be. Because I love it when I see parents who are at that stage of celebration. And it's interesting because I've worked with a number of families. I've seen kids in their age 3 or 4. I'm still seeing them in their late 20s and early 30s, and watching parents go through these stages. It is just so exciting when I see parents reach that stage of celebration. Doesn't mean you've stopped working. Doesn't mean you've stopped trying to improve success and reach the goal of a great quality of life for your youth. But it's just, you can just celebrate everything about your child just like you originally imagined when you're having your child. Another thing I have observed, and this is what really got me excited about the transition to adulthood, is that if you can keep energy in the system and keep from burning out, which is a big task, you will be pleasantly surprised, and many of you may be able to attest to this personally. You'll be pleasantly surprised of the progress that happens in adulthood. So when I've worked with, we kind of go into the game of raising children thinking that, oh, we're going to be, by age 18 to 20, they're going to launch, and my job as a parent is done. And I don't know, when I have 4 kids myself, and they're all in their 20s and 30s. I feel like I'm more stressed by them now than I ever was. I don't know where I got the idea that my job as a parent ends at age 18 to 20. It certainly doesn't. But I think your role is different. When you have a child that becomes an adult child, where maybe you are their legally assigned guardian, or maybe you have power of attorney, or maybe you're still just the primary quote unquote case manager for the person to kind of help, coach them through their adult years. You play a bigger part, and you really are the most important part, at least in 2022, in the way that we deliver our services and supports. You are kind of forced by default to be the case manager and the glue that puts it together. And that's tough to accept, I think, for many people. And I think as you age, it gets harder. I think as your child becomes an adult, your relationship changes and it gets harder. So it's hard to keep it together in the 20s, but if you can do it, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by the continued progress that your adult child will make. The progress that I've seen, and the cases where I've seen the most progress, have been people that can remain connected to their community and can participate in their community. Community participation is not easy for many of our young adults. You all know the services go away when you leave the kind of the quote unquote pediatric years. School is no longer an entitlement after age 21 for our young adults. There's a lot of evidence that employment is really the key for many of our young individuals to stay social and to continue learning and to continue to participate. But our employment rates are quite frankly dismal right now. So we have to come up with other ways to think about how we participate in the community. But we see it in individual cases. We see anecdotal examples of the progress that can be made by lifelong learning, participating in the community, and continuing to grow those skills that, I think this is not different than any other human. I hope my social skills are better now than they were when I was 18. And when I think about my skills in that area, it's, a lot of working in groups at school and then on your job, and working in partnership with other people. So that's the biggest message I kind of want to get across to you all. I'd like to open up to questions if you would have them. But I think that the point of these stages that you go through as a parent, and the point of this progress that we see in adulthood, we have many challenges that we face. Your role as a kind of case manager by default is an important kind of concept. But it is for me, it's phenomenal. I'm so blessed to be connected with so many families that I've known over the years. And I feel like not only have I benefited, but my entire family and my so-called neurotypical children have benefited as well. I see a few questions. I don't know, Mary or Sarah, Alex, how do you want to do this? Do I just look at them, or does somebody want to shout them out, or how do we want to do this for questions and
I'm happy to shout them out if that's helpful for you.
Yeah, let's do that, Mary.
Great. So we have someone, Keith, who's asking about the Alyssa Burnett Center. If you could speak a little bit about that. His child has taken classes there, and it's been a wonderful resource for him and his family, for adults with autism.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah. So the Alyssa Burnett Adult Life Center up in Bothell was born out of a beautiful gift from the Burnett family. Charlie and Barbara Burnett. Charlie was one of the original founders of Costco, and their daughter Alyssa is in her 30s. And it's one of the unfair things for many of you that have many of you out there that maybe are in your 20s with intellectual disabilities, or you have a family member in their 20s or 30s. You guys all went through the early days where there weren't early intervention services 20, 25 years ago, and now you're going through the same stage where there's not enough for adults. And but the Burnett family saw this, and we had talked about this idea about community participation, and that there's just not enough opportunities. And that program is an example of a program tailored for young adults to continue learning and to have opportunities to socialize. We built it when we launched it in, I think, 2014, kind of like a hybrid between a school and a Parks and Rec program. And I think that we have seen it really grow and take off. We have some great anecdotal stories. We highlighted some of them on Fox 13 News last week, and actually a blog post that was written by one of our participants. Two of our Alyssa Burnett participants just this last year were hired as classroom assistants because of the progress that they've made through that continued participation and lifelong learning. And just very excited to see that at least for some, that is playing out exactly as we hoped and planned, that participating in these programs. The Alyssa Burnett program does offer virtual classes, but that's hard for a lot of our young adults, and we need more Alyssa Burnett programs. And there are other programs out in the community. A couple that we're closely affiliated with, Tavon Center out on the east side, Bridge of Promise also on the east side. I think about the Max Higbee Center up in Bellingham, and we're seeing some of these other programs launch elsewhere. Our hope is that those programs can network and coordinate, and that we can really create a web of support for young adults across Washington State, and ideally even beyond Washington State.
That's great. I love that way of bringing community, like you spoke of earlier, like how different opportunities for people to really participate in community and how we're building that web. So thank you for that work. We have a comment from Megan, who says that she saw you briefly with their newly diagnosed 2-year-old who is now 18. Thanks for focusing on celebration. We're looking forward to adulthood with him. So thank you so much for coming today to speak to this group.
That's really nice to hear. It's a sign that we're all getting older, but it is really nice to see. I spend most of my clinical time now at our adult autism clinic, and we're hoping that's another area that we need to kind of expand. And I've got a lot of work to do at University of Washington on creating opportunities for learning for our healthcare providers, as well as our direct service providers, in-home care providers and supported living homes need more opportunities for learning. Our job coaches need more opportunities for learning. So I got a lot of work to do still, but nice to hear some progress.
Yeah. And that just, there's another comment that was really speaking to why parent outcomes in the early supports for infants and toddlers program are so important, is because we are really starting, how do we keep families in community? How do we start building those skills and connections for families early for those 2-year-olds, so that when they're 18 and transitioning into adulthood, they can continue that work.
Yeah, something I reflect on when I have pediatrician medical or residents rotate through our adult clinic is, and also kind of teaching our nurse practitioners at the autism center and such, is about trying to think, even at those young ages, thinking about activities that can carry on into adulthood. I have a patient that his mom was a golfer, and his one of his interests were ATM machines. He knew like all the ATM machines everywhere, and so she paired, well, we'll go see that ATM, but we're going to go golfing first. And he ended up competing nationally at the Special Olympics in golf because he became a really good golfer, and he still does it, and that has become their main recreation that they do together. And so that's sort of thinking out of the box on how do you come up with community ways to participate in the community that kind of continue into adulthood, I think is a great way to think about things.
Yeah, that's great. And that kind of ties with the next question, which is, I have a 9-year-old with autism spectrum disorder. What are some things that those of us with elementary age kids on the spectrum can begin doing now that would help our kids and us as parents as we transition to adulthood?
That's a great question. I can't believe it's already 12:24, so we're almost done. I think one of the biggest feedbacks that we have had from adult self-advocates, and this is directed at both clinicians, parents, and teachers, is that we focus too much on the negative. We focus too much on deficits. And there's a lot of evidence that's supporting that we need to be skill-based. We need to be focusing on strengths and trying to identify what are those strengths that we can capitalize and that we can celebrate and that we could grow upon. In my story of the golfing was an example of that. So I think that not always focusing on the negative, but finding those strengths and trying to grow those. Now, obviously, deficits can get in the way, and you can't ignore those. But really focusing on the strengths. And then the second thing that self-advocates have taught us is we don't start early enough teaching self-advocacy skills. It's always easier to tie your kid's shoelace, right? But you can't do it forever. So we have to teach these self-advocacy skills, and we don't start early enough as clinicians and parents and teachers. So teaching those self-advocacy skills and focusing on positives and strengths would be kind of my biggest recommendations to parents at all parents and individuals at all ages.
Yeah, I love that. I love you can actually hold the strengths of someone as well as their learning edges together to really make some great progress. So I so appreciate that. I know that we are running up against our end time here. Do you have any final words for us, Dr. Stobbe?
Just celebrate and keep moving forward. Find that energy to keep in the system. Take care of yourself, because you are. If you're a family member, you're the most important, kind of partner. So don't forget about your own needs, because it's a long road, folks, and we gotta keep that energy in the system.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has just been an amazing session. So grateful to have you with us here today. Thank you again, Dr. Stobbe. So today's virtual conversation is a benefit in support of Child Strive and the work that we do in the community to make a difference in the lives of young families. To help us continue this important work, we ask that you consider making a gift.